In the heart of 18th century England, before the chimneys smoked and the engines roared, there was silence, broken only by the rhythmic clatter of looms in small cottages and the voices of families spinning thread by hand. The land was still green, rural, and dominated by traditions that had ruled for centuries. People worked the soil, raised sheep for wool, and crafted goods in tiny workshops. But beneath that pastoral calm, something stirred. A new force was gathering, one fed by ships sailing across oceans, by markets expanding faster than borders, and by the growing hunger for speed, efficiency, and control. This was the twilight of the agrarian world and the dawn of something entirely different. The commercial revolution had already laid the groundwork. Centuries of maritime exploration had opened up trade routes from India, Africa, and the Americas. Tea, sugar, tobacco, and cotton flowed into British ports, bringing not just exotic goods, but immense profit. That profit, in turn, became the fuel for something no one yet fully understood: industrial transformation. What changed everything wasn't just trade, but how England used what it gained. While empires clashed for resources abroad, England quietly built a system at home to protect innovation and reward risk. Property rights were codified in law, investors found safety in structured banking systems, and the government, instead of stifling enterprise, often encouraged it. Patents allowed inventors to claim ownership over their ideas, ensuring that a breakthrough could mean not just fame, but fortune. This legal and financial security created an environment unlike any other in Europe. A society willing to gamble on ideas, to pour wealth into machines, and to imagine a world no longer dependent on muscle or wind. Meanwhile, the cotton pouring in from colonies like India and plantations in the Americas became more than fabric. It became the foundation for an entire economy. British entrepreneurs realized that if they could spin more thread faster, they could clothe the world and dominate the global market. And so, in quiet workshops and smoky taverns, minds began to stir. Inventions emerged not as sudden flashes of genius, but as answers to urgent questions. How do we spin faster? How do we weave wider? How do we power machines when the river runs dry? The flying shuttle, the spinning jenny, the water frame, each born from necessity, each transforming the way cloth was made. No longer confined to a weaver's hands, threads stretched across machines, harnessing the flow of water, and soon something even more powerful. The race had begun, and with it, the transformation of England itself. But the machines were only the beginning. The transformation began not with fire or steel, but with a piece of wood, a single invention in 1733 that would send ripples across the world. It was called the flying shuttle, and its creator, John Kay, was a weaver's son with a mind for mechanics. What it did was simple, yet revolutionary. It allowed one worker to weave cloth as wide as two. Before Kay, weaving was slow, narrow, and limited by the human arm. After Kay, looms could stretch wider, move faster, and multiply output. Cloth production surged, but something unexpected happened. Weavers could now produce more fabric than the spinners could supply with thread. The balance was broken, and the race to catch up began. Just 3 decades later, James Hargreaves answered with the spinning jenny. One worker, many spools. Thread spun simultaneously, faster than ever before. But the thread was weak, good for weft, but not warp. The machines weren't done evolving yet. Enter Richard Arkwright and the water frame. Larger, sturdier, and powered not by hand but by water, it produced strong, reliable thread fit for weaving. It didn't belong in cottages. It needed space, supervision, and water flow. Arkwright's factories rose beside rivers, their wheels churning day and night. And yet, even this was just a stepping stone. Samuel Crompton fused Hargreaves' speed with Arkwright's strength and birthed the spinning mule. It produced the finest, strongest thread the world had seen. Suddenly, cloth wasn't just handmade, it was engineered. Textiles went from craft to industry, from art to arithmetic. But water was fickle. What happened when the river ran low? The answer came in smoke and steam. In 1775, James Watt perfected the steam engine. It didn't just power machines, it broke the chain that tied factories to rivers. Now, factories could rise anywhere coal could be hauled. Cities like Manchester and Birmingham exploded into industrial hubs. Chimneys pierced the sky, streets filled with soot, and the pace of production became relentless. Inside, workers stood shoulder to shoulder, 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, surrounded by noise, heat, and motion. Children squeezed beneath machinery too dangerous for adult hands. Families moved from villages into tenement slums, chasing wages but finding smoke and sickness. The fabric of society was changing, woven on the same looms that once promised progress. But as machines multiplied and cities swelled, something else began to stir among the workers themselves. Progress has a price, and in the shadow of England's rising smokestacks, it was the children who paid first. While steam engines roared and spindles spun, the hands that kept them moving were often the smallest. Orphanages, once meant as havens, became recruitment grounds for labor. Children as young as 7 were handed over to factory owners under the promise of apprenticeship. What they received instead were 14-hour shifts, 6 days a week, in rooms thick with lint and deafening with the noise of machines. Some stood at looms taller than themselves. Others cleaned under spinning mules while they still ran. Accidents were common, punishment was brutal, and rest was a luxury. What mattered wasn't safety or well-being, it was output. The faster the machines turned, the harder the children worked, and the faster the cities grew. Manchester, once a quiet market town, became the blueprint of the industrial city. Within a single generation, its population exploded. Thousands flocked in from the countryside seeking work and hope, but found chaos. Factories operated day and night, and the air grew thick with soot. Houses were built at a breakneck pace, but never fast enough, never clean enough. Entire families crammed into single rooms without running water or sewage systems. Disease spread like fire: cholera, typhus, tuberculosis. The streets overflowed not just with people, but with waste and misery. Mortality soared. The poor lived short, brutal lives, if they survived childhood at all. It was into this reality that Friedrich Engels walked, notebook in hand. In 1845, he published The Condition of the Working Class in England, a brutal portrait of a world transformed not just by machines, but by neglect. Engels documented alleys so narrow that no light reached the ground, homes infested with rats, and children who'd never seen clean air. He wrote of hunger, exhaustion, and a system that demanded more than flesh could give. Yet the workers were not silent. Whispers turned to meetings, and meetings into movements. In dark pubs and smoky halls, ideas began to circulate, ideas of fairness, of rights, of resistance. And as tensions rose, a new figure emerged, not an inventor, but a rebel. The British industrial miracle wasn't born in isolation. It was sculpted by empire, sharpened by ambition, and fueled by a network of colonies stretched across the globe. Behind every humming factory in Manchester stood ships crossing the Atlantic, warehouses in Bombay, and plantations in the American South. Cotton, the lifeblood of the textile industry, flowed into British ports in staggering volume. But this wasn't a mere trade, it was control. Through policies designed to strangle competition, Britain dismantled thriving textile hubs like those in India. Skilled Indian weavers, once famed for their muslins and fine cloths, were pushed aside by a wave of cheap, mechanized British imports. This wasn't coincidence, it was strategy. As raw cotton came in, finished goods flooded out, binding entire economies to British industry. What looked like innovation from the outside was, in truth, a tightly woven web of commercial dominance. Historian Eric Hobsbawm would later call it a dual revolution. On one side, the Industrial Revolution, machines, factories, engines. On the other, the political aftershocks of events like the French Revolution, ideals of liberty, individual rights, and representative government. Together, they did more than transform industries, they reshaped the world's entire economic logic. Capitalism, as we know it today, was born from this fusion. It wasn't just about production, it was about ownership, labor, markets, and power. Britain became the template, but not the limit. Soon, the fire spread. Belgium, with its rich coal deposits and access to waterways, became the first industrial power on the European continent by the early 1800s. Its cities lit up with the hum of machinery and the rise of steel. France followed, slower but deliberate, carefully integrating machines into its artisanal traditions. And across the Atlantic, the young United States began importing not just British cotton, but British know-how. Engineers crossed borders, blueprints were smuggled, and mills rose along rivers in New England. Industrial espionage became a form of statecraft. Nations raced to catch up, And as they did, a global shift began. The world no longer turned on the rhythm of seasons or the silence of farms, but on the relentless pulse of machines. And yet, while industries flourished and empires expanded, a different revolution brewed, not of iron, but of ideals. Beneath the gears and smoke of the Industrial Revolution, another transformation was unfolding, quiet, sprawling, and made of stone, iron, and vision. Infrastructure. As factories churned out goods faster than ever before, a new challenge emerged: how to move it all. England responded not with hesitation, but with excavation. Canals sliced across the countryside, man-made rivers that connected coal mines to ports, mills to markets. Barges floated through these liquid highways, hauling tons of raw materials with ease. Where water didn't reach, roads were paved and privatized. Turnpike trusts laid down toll routes, straighter, smoother, and faster than muddy village paths. And then came the railways, beasts of speed and steel that changed everything. By the 1830s, locomotives roared across Britain, stitching distant towns into a single pulsing economic heart. For the first time itself became measurable. Arrival, departure, schedules synchronized by train whistles. But these veins of commerce needed fuel, and deep beneath English soil lay its black gold, coal. Mines expanded rapidly, feeding furnaces that forged not only power but possibility. From coal came steam, from steam came steel. The ironworks grew, and with them the rise of machines, bridges, tracks, and towering buildings. Siderurgy, the crafting of iron and steel, broke through barriers between industries. Now, mining fed metalworks, which fed machinery, which built the next mine. A loop of industry turning faster with each invention. Yet cities grew faster than logic allowed. London, Manchester, Birmingham, cities of ambition became cities of chaos. Slums pressed against factories, sewage flowed through open gutters, and epidemics tore through crowded streets. But in that disorder came urgency, and in urgency, innovation. Sanitation reforms gave birth to underground sewer systems, drastically reducing disease. Public transport, buses, trams, and eventually underground trains began to redefine the shape of the modern city. Urban planning, once an afterthought, became survival. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, another engine powered it all: finance. Banks expanded, offering credit to entrepreneurs and investors. Corporations formed with legal protections, allowing massive investments without personal risk. Patents shielded inventors, attracting bright minds eager to transform the world. The entire system became more than metal and manpower. It became structured, scalable, strategic. And as it grew, it paved the way for a second wave of revolution, one that would cross oceans and rewire the entire planet.